Okay, hello. Hello. Good morning. We'll take.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Hey, good to see everyone. Yes, fantastic. You're all very welcome here. I would like to ask President of ATU Galway City, Dr. Orla Flynn, to officially open the conference. Thank you.
Dermot, Bhualan fáilte mór Chomh Glare Imagine Shaw. Delighted to welcome you here. So delighted to hear also that you're celebrating your 50th anniversary, and the former ATU, or the artist formerly known as GMIT, which is now ATU Galway City, is also celebrating its 50th anniversary, its Golden Jubilee. We're just coming to the end, and 50 years ago, in the late 1970s, I guess, the regional technical colleges were established, and then we saw a number of RTCs set up around the country, and Galway Mayo, again, 50 years ago. And at that time, computer science was really in its infancy as an education item and as a teaching tool. So for me, it's really lovely to have you here this morning. I myself, and I guess coming out in the early 1980s, computer science wasn't something that was kind of well understood. A lot of kids maybe growing up nowadays might have parents who are working in software or working in tech, but back then none of us really knew what on earth all this computer stuff was. I mean, we had a vague notion about programming, and I went off and I did my degree in computer science, and I was among the first class in UCC that had personal computers and the IBM 286 machine. And I remember a colleague of mine, well, a fellow student, putting in his 5 1/4 inch floppy disk the wrong way around and trying to pull it out, and half of it got stuck, and it was the absolute end of the world at the time. But up until that time, and I was in 3rd year when that happened, and up till that time we were working on a mainframe. So we had the Prime mainframe, and there were IBM mainframes. And at that time, you understood that what you had in the lab was really just, it was really just an interface. All the work happened somewhere else, happened up in some other room somewhere else. And when we got the 286 machines, it was so exciting because suddenly you had it right here. You did it all right here on the machine in front of you. And I suppose as an industry, that was an exciting time, and we moved on, and we had the 386 and the 486, and I might be wrong on this now, but I remember getting a computer, a desktop, when I started. I worked for a long time in Cork RTC, and having probably a 3 or 486 machine with 20 megabytes on the hard drive, and thinking, how on earth would we ever fill 20 megabytes on a hard drive? And then, of course, we got the internet and email, and you know, we all completely lost the run of ourselves after that. And it's very interesting to reflect on the industry trends now, and to see how, you know, the trend back towards processing somewhere else. So when we look at, you know, the cloud, people have this notion about the cloud. The cloud is really just somebody else's computer. I saw a very funny meme about that the other day. And over the 50 years that you've been in existence, look at how the changes, look at all the changes that you've seen as educators. And I do want to pay tribute to Adrian Webb, who is, I think, standing down as chair, and the achievements that you have delivered in the last couple of years. And the role, I guess, that you've played. I suppose nobody likes to talk about the pandemic in any kind of a positive light, but in the transformation in our education system has been extraordinary, and the role that has played of our computers has been phenomenal. And schools that were better equipped to deal with that, I think, saw much better outcomes for their students. So teachers who understood a bit more about using technology in their education found that transition an awful lot easier. And I was very interested to hear that, you know, a lot of the emphasis on computers in education and computers in schools has been about networks, and it's been about physical infrastructure. And I'm on the board actually of HEAnet, and that's a body that really tries to drive and support the network and the infrastructure for computers in our entire education system. But delighted to hear that there's a growing emphasis on computers in education itself and ed tech, and that's an area where we're very active in ATU. ATU was established on the 1st of April in 2022, so we're not yet 1 year old, and we have campuses in Donegal, in Letterkenny and in Killybegs. We have a campus in Sligo. We have a campus in Connemara in Letterfrack. We have a campus, we have education out in Montbellew in the Agriculture College, and we have 2 campuses here in Galway City. And on all of those campuses, you will see EdTech in action. We were fortunate we'd had a HEA-funded project called iKnote underway just as the pandemic was kicked off. So for us, the EdTech journey is side by side with the journey you've had. We've been fortunate to have many leaders in EdTech in our organisation. And whether you're in the Art College and you're doing the work on augmented reality and virtual reality, whether you're a computer science student learning about cyber and AI and all of these ChatGPT stuff that will really begin to bother us as educators and cause us worry, or whether you're a business student and you're looking at, you know, stock market trends, or whether you're in digital media and social media and understanding how to log your analytics, data analytics around your social media feeds. There's something for everybody in the audience. So really that's kind of all I wanted to say, but it's lovely to be hosting you here on your Golden Jubilee as we celebrate ours here in this particular campus, and I wish you well. I can't stay with you for the morning. I believe you have a fantastic keynote speaker, and delighted, but I'm a bit at the moment this week, a bit like that movie that's probably going to sweep all the Oscars, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, because I really should be in two other places today. We're hosting the Institute of Guidance Counsellors annual conference on our Sligo campus. They haven't met for 3 years, and in the Bacon, the Connacht Dome, we are hosting the InterVarsity Ladies Gaelic Football Finals, and our Donegal team are in the Division 2 final, and that's where I'm going to be planting my flag. So, Gormagrib, and enjoy the day. Cheers.
Thanks very much, Dr. Orla Flynn. I'd like to take the opportunity just to officially welcome you all here today, attendees, presenters, makers, pre-records, online attendees, vendors, technicians, catering, and of course the CESI National Executive. It's great credit to everyone for having travelled here today and for persisting despite the inclement weather conditions. Our first return to face-to-face conferencing is set against the backdrop of a renewed hope, I suppose, and optimism that teachers and students experiences during the emergency school closures, and that there was going to be more evidence of the potential of ICT to enhance teaching and learning at school, and that is now going to be finally realised. And I suppose while the most recent digital strategy for schools lists more successes in visible ICTs in schools than enhanced teaching and learning, well, what innovative and creative use of digital education or digital technology at school looks like. We have a wonderful timetable for you here today. We have Dr. Deirdre Butler, we have Lego Leagues, we have computer-supported collaborative learning, emerging technologies, leaving cert computer science, artificial intelligence, assistive technologies, augmented reality, supports for EAL learners, encouraging girls to choose computer science, virtual reality, computational thinking. We have a rowdy bunch of makers rooms upstairs. We have turtle stitching, Our Kids Code, active computational thinking games, pitch, ideas for Code Week, and advice about what to do with older laptops. This year, CESI celebrates its 50th anniversary, and it continues to grow from strength to strength, with its status as the official TPN for Leaving Certificate Computer Science, the Leaving Cert Quiz, the CESI staff room, and its growing social media presence. To quote Jerry Hogan, who was an Honourable Secretary of CESI back in 2001, any voluntary organisation with no obvious means of support manages to survive for so long as CESI has, well, it must point towards fulfilling a perceived need for teachers and educators across Ireland. Well, let's hope that today's conference fulfills some needs and it sparks curiosities and desires for some more. A few items of housekeeping. So please be mindful of the fire exits and your exits from the building. Theatres 994, 995 and 996 on this floor will host the 3 main streams. Theatre 994 will live stream to YouTube and is available at the URL on the screen behind me. Upstairs in room 1033 there will be 2 sessions, the first beginning at around about 11:05. The maker rooms also take place upstairs in rooms 1031 and 1032 and will be ongoing throughout the day. Also throughout the day, the CESI executive will be on hand, and they will be manning desks and they will be here to assist you if you have any questions or queries. The Twitter hashtag for the conference is #CESICon. Again, you can find it here at the tinyurl.com on the screen. And please like, share, subscribe and retweet. The vendors are available all day outside of the theatres, and we would encourage you all to go and have a chat with the vendors, talk about their products and look at what's new and innovative in Irish education. We encourage you to keep your lanyards on and your name tags on as well. This just helps people to put a face to a name or put a name to a face and spark off those important professional conversations that we have. After lunch there is 1 session and then that will be followed by a teach meet. This is a new addition to the conference. The teach meet will take place here and it's a new addition to the conference which we're very excited about. Teas and coffees will be available in the foyer between 11:30 and 11:45 and after lunch. Teas and coffees will not be available in the restaurant, so people will have to come back up after their meals to the foyer again. There are a number of pre-recorded sessions online. These are available again at this tiny URL. As you can see, this is quite an important URL and we have it on the screen. Please take it down and access it as you go through. Also, please keep an eye out for details of our AGM online. As we said, CESI is a voluntary organisation and we're always looking for new blood and new ideas on the CESI executive. A huge debt of gratitude to the conference committee. As I said, we are a voluntary organisation. We have been meeting once a week since around about last September. So we've done fantastic. Huge thanks to the great Kate Malloy and Pat Seaver, who was over here, and to Richard Millwood, who managed to put some schmott on those rowdy makers upstairs. Very good. Lastly, look, please enjoy yourselves. It is wonderful to be back face to face. Yeah, it's been 2 years of hard slog, of online, of meeting virtually. So let's go and enjoy ourselves today. I would like you to give a big round of applause as I briefly introduce our retiring chairperson, Mrs. Adrienne Webb, whose dedication and leadership is instrumental in CESI's growing reputation and influence in computers in education in Ireland.
Thank you very much for that, Dermot. Fáilte mór chuig gacéine seoiniu agus gacéine eile atálaíonn Harandan. I'd also like to thank Dr. Orla Flynn for officially opening the conference in this wonderful location. As she said, the last time we were here it was GMIT, but now proudly boasts the name ATU Galway City. I think it's very wonderful that 2 things come together in Dr. Orla Flynn as she spoke. One is the 50th celebration of this actual location itself and our conference. There's a lovely symbiosis there. And the fact that her primary degree is technology, so she has an inherent understanding of the journey that we have been on, as well as her own knowledge of that system. And I'd like to state that as a big thank you. Speaking personally, I am absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to say some words on this very special occasion for CESI, which is very, very close to my heart. Firstly, as Dermot has said, and as others will say, it is really wonderful to be back face to face. And that is in no way to take for those two really exciting conferences that the executive managed to pull together in new circumstances for the last 2 years. They themselves were excellent as well, and I wouldn't like to take from that in any way. But the second thing I'd like to think is 50 years. Just think, 50 years and your own age. 50 years and what has happened. 1973. And I have a little friend here that some of you are familiar with, as I've taken it out of previous conferences. And in the 1980s, that was your mobile phone, commonly called the brick. Now, for some people here, they weren't even born at that stage. All you could do was make and receive a call. Now consider that item that every single one person here has in their pocket and the potential that it has. That's a long journey. But I'm going to ask you to think about it in a different way too. And just very quickly, either mentally or a piece of paper, to jot down your first ever interaction with technology, whatever it was. Just take a moment and think. What was the first bit of tech you handled, you used? Maybe put a year on it if you can. Now I want you to think about the piece of technology that you could not live without today. The journey from that first piece to the second piece, no matter how young you are, is quite impressive. It's more than impressive. It's absolutely mind-blowing. I want you to wonder, and during the day, to wonder at the amount of change that has taken place over those 50 years. It's so easy to say it and say, oh yeah, it's grand, we're celebrating 50 years. But just actually think. And I'll add in a few facts about 1973. In 1973, it was the year that the Xerox Alto, the very first personal computer, came on the market. The first cell phone call was made. TCP, Ethernet, and fiber optics were created. Britain, Ireland, and Denmark became the 7th, 8th, and 9th members of the European Common Market. And think about how much that has changed, particularly in the recent past. In '73, I was a second-year student in a small secondary school in Dublin. The height of my technology was a large, some of you may recall who are of my similar vintage, a spool-to-spool player that we could hear how we should be pronouncing our French. Well, that's my first memory. Amazingly, this is the amazing thing, at the same time, a group of enthusiasts decided to found the Computer Education Society of Ireland. And that followed, interestingly enough, a department-sponsored course here in Galway from the renowned Professor A.C. Vaishpai from Loughborough University of Technology. And again, think about that. Sure, they were way out there out of the field. Who the hell was talking about computers and all that sort of stuff? Talk about a small group. But many of the characteristics of those pioneers continue to be part and parcel of CESI. The cross-level backgrounds of those involved, the enthusiasm and excitement around the possibilities that are offered by technology to teaching and learning, the fascination with the technology itself, and the desire to push boundaries for the improvement of teaching and learning. And curiosity is also always a key ingredient. And I certainly hope that all of these characteristics will continue to be the absolute mainstays of CESI going forward. Each decade has brought new members into the fold, constantly refreshing and bringing differing viewpoints. Because of the diverse nature of the membership, some were on several different committees in the wider educational sphere, and on occasion would bring a CESI viewpoint to discussion. In this manner, to some degree at least, the organisation began to be recognised as a go-to one around the area of computers in education. This continues to be the case today. And I would like to pay tribute at this point to the PDST, Technology and Education, for their invitation to CESI to collaborate with them in the support of the Leaving Cert computer science rollout. It has been a very, very fruitful cooperation. And each decade has seen the increasing uses of technologies in wider society, from that group in '73 who are definitely the outliers, to a ubiquitous use of technology. Certainly, I would suggest the ability to book cheap flights online helped people get over their fear of using the computers in the 1990s. The faster the developments in the hardware, the greater the affordability, the wider the availability, the use became. Obviously, COVID pushed everybody out of their comfort zone across society. So where does CESI, now the Computers in Education Society of Ireland, fit in? I would argue that technology is one thing. Technology in education is a completely different ballgame. CESI provides a space where teaching and learning is at the heart of what people are about. There is discussion, sharing of thoughts and opinions, the opportunities to learn from one another. I'm not saying in any way that everybody has to be part of CESI. There's superb work being done by teachers who've never even heard of the organisation. And that's grand. No, the critical point here is that this is a group of people across the different levels of education who actively talk and think about technology in the teaching and learning context. And standing on the giants of each decade before has earned the respect of the decision makers, of the influencers in the educational area. Now, this group of people includes all of you, and everybody that's joining us via the web. It's not just an executive. An executive is a small group of people who, out of the goodness of their hearts, undertake to keep forging ahead. So my challenge to each of you is to keep the conversations going. Technologies will continue to develop in all sorts of directions, seen and totally unforeseen. It can be very easy to get caught up in the wonder without asking the critical question: how can it improve teaching and learning? My challenge to all of you: don't stop asking. Thank you. And now I have the great honour and pleasure to introduce Dr. Deirdre Butler to give her her full title. If you haven't done so, I invite you to read Deirdre's bio on the conference website, just to be impressed. However, I want to introduce her in a slightly different way. During my career, our paths have crossed on more than one occasion. I have always been aware that she is a powerhouse. She has vision which is based on experience and research, wonderful determination, and a firm resolve when she starts something. She is straight-talking and fearless, a champion anyone would wish for in their corner. We in education should be very glad it's our corner that she is in. It is with great pleasure that I now invite Deirdre to give the opening keynote of this 50th celebration.
Usual now we have to do the tech piece, trying to make sure everything is working, that we're all connected. And we'll try this here. Working on this thing.
You're going wireless too, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just hit wireless now?
No, it's
HDMI, is
this
it?
one, that one. No, that one.
USB-C.
Yeah.
There you are, yeah.
Are you a wanderer?
Pardon?
Are you wandering or are you going to stay here?
No, I'm a wanderer.
Okay, so this is the mic for the room, this is the mic for the camera. So I'm going to just stick this on you here, if that's all right,
Yeah.
Good woman.
I'm a wanderer, yep. Okay, can I have everybody's attention? Yep. That's always what happens when everybody's given, teachers especially, are given any in whatsoever. It's whatever. Thanks a million, Adrian, for your wonderful, kind words. And it's a great privilege to be here. And I, like some people in the room, have been on the journey of nearly the 50 years as well, which is when you actually stand back, you say, oh my God, have we been around that long? And have we been fighting that long as well? So what's really important for me, and most people who know me, I'm quite passionate about what I think, what I feel, and I'll actually sort of, as Adrian says, go to the death to try and get something done. So what's really, really exciting is that we're back face to face. I live on the energy of people, and I missed people a lot during COVID. And that education is the most powerful weapon that we can use to actually change the world. And if we really have to engage with it, we have a huge moral responsibility as educators to make sure that the next generation and the current generation are actually able to live and thrive in our complex world. We knew this, and this is why I really took this, because I think it's very important. We knew this back at the beginning of the century, that these were the skills that were in decline and that these skills were the ones that were in the ascendancy. So I'm asking you, when we actually design thinking and we design sort of learning, etc., are we actually planning for critical thinking and complex communication? Because that's what we need to do. We needed to do it 20 years ago. Levy and Murnane did another study about a decade later, and actually it's just different words they're talking about now, working with new information and solving unstructured problems. So we don't have answers. We have to be able to work on the fly, understand, try and use our resilience to actually work out what's going on. So at the same time this was happening, we actually now had, even though there were the first crew that actually put down the stake in the ground, it took quite some time, 20 years, before we actually had what looks like our first official policy with regard to technology and education. A lot of us in the room here sort of lived through a lot of these. And we had different things that became important at different times. We actually had to think of, this was our first vision, and there was a lot of to and fro and a lot of arguments. And if you looked at the thing that stands out for me here is the fact that we're still talking about ICT. It was a word that actually drove me nuts because it was information and communication technology. It didn't actually capture the full realm of what we wanted to do. The other word that drove me nuts as well is this word, integration, okay? Because for me, the word integration means it's sort of, it's a nice to have rather than a must have. And it's like on the edges. I prefer stronger words. And we did actually get them developed as we went through. Here on the digital learning framework, if you look at it, it's moving beyond ICT integration, where digital technology is seamlessly used in all aspects. I think it's a stronger language. We did a lot of fighting to get that language in. And the word seamlessly was really, really important. The next move was when we actually successfully got the word embed into the sort of lexicon that people were using. So we were gradually sort of moving it all the time. And lots of people in this room were on lots of committees that we actually sort of kept pushing it and pushing it. And hard work does pay off because we do get things interested and embedded into the sort of the lexicon of policy. The one thing we do know is the fact that students, and it means everybody, who are unable to navigate through a complex digital landscape, they will no longer, and that's really important, they will no longer be able to participate fully in society. And that's really, really important, not only in the economics, but also the cultural and social life around them. So there is a recognition from the OECD that the use of technology is actually not a nice to have, it's a must have in order to live. So we were beginning to actually really make inroads, and then the inevitable happened, COVID. Now it's sort of, you can see it as a silver lining. So, because I was the one, as I said, my son always says to me, the one thing I hate about you and the one thing I love about you is your eternal optimism. So I said, okay, we all lived through those years. We're all suffering post-traumatic stress disorder at this stage as well from it. But it did bubble to the surface a lot of things. We did have to engage. This document, I think, really captures what was actually happening. And what I like is the fact you're talking about education reimagined, the future of learning. So we have all of us in the room have moved through these sort of phases. We were in the zones of disruption, unsettled. We didn't know what was going to happen in the morning. We closed on Thursday and we were told in the university sector, you better be up and running on Monday. So we had a whole 3 days to get ready. And then we were in a constant state of flux, redesign. Where, are we opening? Are we closing? Are we face-to-face? Are we not face-to-face? Are we online? And we were going through this where then there was transition where schools and universities began to reopen. Now I think we're actually trying to look at this where we're beginning to reimagine learning. I like these words. We're talking about agile, innovative, future-focused, hybrid, deep learning systems. Not deep in the way the sort of the AI people think about it, but actually deep in the real sense. Okay, really deep learning. What does that look like? And for us, it's actually trying to reimagine. And I think what we need to have to look at is the words for designing for learning. So it's not like sort of, textbook, this page, that page, this page, that page. It's actually, we really have to design for learning. So we really have to look and think about the people we are actually designing the learning environments for. They all come with different needs, different interests, different backgrounds, different contexts, and we have to design for that. So how do we do that? The deep, everybody at this stage knows, I think, about the Digital Education Action Plan. Our own new digital strategy for schools is based upon it. And if you look at the language as well, they're talking about resetting education. They use the word training because it's used a lot. Everybody who knows me actually knows I'm allergic to the word training, because I really believe that everybody has to be educated. And if I was given a choice, I'd actually like to get rid of these words. But it's talking about the digital age. So language is really, really important. And it's seriously influenced, again, because a lot of us were in the room. Look at now the vision of the new strategy. It has moved on in leaps and bounds. The language is actually nearly unrecognizable because our thinking has grown a lot. And what's nice about this digital strategy is there was a huge consultation process. Everybody was consulted, parents, students, teachers, all the bodies. We were actually groaning, myself and Margaret, because we had to do the baseline report. And it was like the magic porridge pot. Every time we thought we were nearly there, the department would say, and we have another consultation group. And we have another consultation group, and we're saying, oh, sweet divine God, how are we going to get this done? But what was good was the fact that everybody had an opportunity to engage. And if you look at it, it actually now represents, I think, a much more fuller explanation of what the use of digital technologies in education really is all about. So if you look at the language, it's empower schools to harness the opportunities of digital transformation, to build digital competence, an effective digital learning ecosystem, so as to develop competent, critical, engaged, active learners while supporting them to reach their potential and participate fully as global citizens in a digital world. Huge difference in language between the 2015 and the 2022. And that's thanks to everybody here in the room that got their voices heard. So we need to now say, okay, how do we move these cogs? Like sort of BC to me now has a new meaning, as I'm sure it has for all of you, like before COVID, during COVID, after COVID. After COVID now the language of this digital transformation is everywhere. However, I think we need to actually try and work out, well, what do we mean by digital education? What do we mean by transformation? What do we mean by digital education transformation? And I think no wonder we're in a stage where we're confused, perplexed, unclear, lost. We need to actually work out what does it mean for every one of us. We're great at policy, but the nice thing about policy is policy gives us the license to then act. Okay, so we have to be responsible for how we now develop that really visionary vision statement that we all contributed to. So we need to actually make these definitions. I think we need to be very careful though, because we need to ask the right type of questions in the right order. And often at the time, we forget the first one, the why. There's a big rush out to, what are we going to buy? New funding, shiny new toys, what are we going to get? I want this, I want that. And it never goes beyond the actual equipment. I think we need to ask the first question, because these are the people that we're responsible for, okay? And everybody in between. How do we make sure that we're looking at the world as we know it? It's complex, it's connected, it's interconnected. On the horizon, we all are talking about AI. Again, it's another thing that drives me nuts because it's artificial intelligence. It's not intelligent at all. The operative word is artificial. Again, it leads to confusion. We need to ask these questions because that's what's in our power. What kind of future do we want to create? What kind of people do we want to nourish? And what values do we want to live by? So it goes beyond just the tech. We need to ask these big sort of existential questions, and everybody needs to ask them in their own context, not just like sort of at a national level, because it looks at a very different picture. People who know me know I use this one all the time, because no matter what we see, even if we see the same thing, we actually have very different interpretations. So we have to be very careful. It's in our hands. We need to know what to do. It's going to be interesting to see how we do it. There's no straight lines. The only thing we're actually sure of is constant change. That's the only thing we're sure of. And now we have to actually work out, how do we develop the resilience to be able to cope with that constant change? You're talking about sort of ChatGTP. I am sick to the back teeth of hearing about ChatGTP, okay? And what people think how wonderful it is. And I'm saying, are you for real? Do you know what I mean? You need to actually look at it. For me, anyway, I'm quite cynical about it. What I am delighted about it is that's actually opened up conversations. It's actually opened up conversations, imagine, about teaching and learning in the university sector, okay? Which is fantastic. So now we need to use those opportunities and get in and understand what's going on. This is an event which is very serendipitous. It's taking place tonight in the Civic Theatre in Tallaght. And what they're actually doing is they're actually using ChatGTP. And the actors are there and they're responding to the script as it emerges and prompts and everything else. But at least you can see that ChatGTP has actually infiltrated even our social life and what we consider as culture. And it'd be interesting, I'd love to be a part of the audience there to see what actually happens. What we do need, though, as educators, we have to now really start asking questions, and we need to push back against particularly what people say, oh, these digital technologies, they're just another tool and won't fundamentally change what we do. We need to push back against that, and we need to actually really say, well, hang on a minute here. Digital technologies don't have an independent existence and cannot be considered separate from the values people have. So they're not just a tool. Okay, they actually become something very different when we actually layer on our values, beliefs, and understandings. It's explicit, their understanding and the nature of knowing and what technologies are used and valued. That's really, really important. It's inextricably linked. Our values, beliefs, assumptions are all inextricably linked. Like Bruner said this nearly like sort of decades and decades ago. Thinking as the internalization of the tools provided by a given culture, okay? So that's how our thinking develops. And then Vygotsky, we all have heard about Vygotsky, which is really important here, and I think we have to really look at it. Changes in tools bring about changes in thinking, and these changes in turn are associated with changes in culture. So they're not just another tool. They really, really change how we fundamentally think. how we fundamentally act, what we do, and that's why I used that, even that example in the civic theatre. It really changes our culture. And if we change our culture, we then have to really think about how we design for learning and how these tools can actually impact. So we need to unpack. And Minsky sort of used this term, which I think is very, very apt. You're talking about suitcase words. For them, different meanings have for different fields have different meanings, like deep learning. Completely different meaning for us as educators as against those who are actually in the AI field, okay? But we come from different backgrounds. So when I say something, I can't assume that any one of you even have the minutest, what would you say, sameness to what I'm interpreting as a particular thing. So the only way we're going to understand each other is if we talk to each other, if we actually sort of interrogate the meanings, and if we come to actually shared understandings. That way we can actually do something. So we need to really tackle, what do we mean by being a digital learner? It's our values, beliefs, and experiences are going to determine what we mean. So it's a HSBC ad, they're fantastic. You'll see them in airports. Whoever is behind their advertising campaign is fantastic. So we're all seeing the same thing, but we're all interpreting very different meanings. So I think this is really, really important to acknowledge. And then we really need, so when we're talking about digital learning, are we talking about the learning spaces? Are we talking about the learning design? Are we talking about the pedagogical approaches, the assessments, the formal, informal, non-formal, lifelong? It's all of that. And we need to unpick it. And we need to be really, really careful about what we do. So we'd say, okay, so we're going to say, where do we go from here? Okay, we're at a point in time, it's after COVID now, we need to redesign learning, we have a new strategy. What we're really good at in Ireland, and the Europeans are always complimenting us on, we're really, really good at policy, okay? However, there's a big chasm between policy and practice. And we're the people that need to be able to implement it. We're the people that need to be able to say, how do we bridge that chasm? What do we do about it? Now, to be fair to the people that develop policy, there has been an awful lot of work done at joining the dots. An awful lot of work done, and let's acknowledge that, okay? All of these policies that have been brought out over the last, like, sort of decade, etc., there is now beginning to be a consistency across them. Like, there is key skills between the senior cycle, the junior cycle, now the primary, and Ashter. So we are talking about key skills. So they're the ones that are being acknowledged. We are now, there's new standards for initial teacher education. We had our visit yesterday from the team. And STEM education now as well, and the literacy and numeracy. The literacy and numeracy and digital literacy is actually now under review. And the STEM education, again, the implementation plan was launched last week. So there is, to be fair, a lot of alignment. However, digital technology per se is not necessarily a driver or a catalytic for change. The introduction of digital technologies in schools does not and will not, in and of itself, actually lead to the development of innovative teaching and learning practices or the transformation of education. People do that, okay? People do that. So we have to actually now understand what are the connections that we want to see. To be fair, we actually have as well frameworks for helping us understand, because a lot of times there was policy, and I always argued in the department, like, policies are not worth diddly squat if we don't have a way of interpreting them in the classroom and at sort of school level. So there was a lot of work put into the digital learning framework. People they either love it, they hate it, it's like porridge, do you know what I mean? But there was, at least there was work put into it. And what it was looked upon was, it was like sort of an object to think with. And that's the important thing. It was your object to think with. It was not going to give you the answers. You had to come up with the solutions. But at least they made the effort. They took the looking at our schools. They took the school self-evaluation process, because you can have a policy. And the nice thing about Ireland, it's not dictated. It's not diktat. We can interpret the policy, and let's not do away with that. We need to be able to keep interpreting the policy at our level because everybody's context is different. So they did try and tie it together. They took the looking at our schools for the inspector's report, they took the school self-evaluation, and then they tried to actually map the framework, the digital learning framework, onto that so that it wouldn't be a new process for schools. And they did actually have the digital learning planning cycle, which if you look at it, those of you who are into design and engineering, etc., it's the same as the design thinking cycle, okay? So you were actually looking at design thinking, and it was to encourage people to design for learning. So this is what we have to do in schools. We should actually be designing for learning. We actually do have a planning cycle. We do have a digital learning framework. So it's how do we actually use those and galvanize those to actually come to our own understandings of what we mean. We also have a digital learning framework. PDST did a huge job in actually developing this, okay? And they actually then began to populate it with videos so that people could see things in action. So to be fair, we have done a lot in the last 20 years, last 10 even, to actually try and understand it. Just before COVID hit, this is what they were trying to do. You know, the digital learning framework, the pilot schools, there was actually a review. And there is progress. Teachers are using a wider range of technologies and using them more frequently. They are collaborating and sharing the resources among teachers. It is being used creatively to engage learners. However, there still is the prominent use for lesson preparation, presenting information. At post-primary, that's the PP is, they use it a lot for communicating with students, and they're beginning to use it an awful lot to support peer-to-peer assessment. I think that's a lot and collaboration. I think it's a lot to do with the classroom-based assessments, etc. So there was more reason to use it. But this is to be celebrated. I mean, we have made progress. And at all levels, however, digitally supported assessment was underdeveloped. So, COVID. However, look upon COVID as a positive. We had to engage with the use of digital technologies, particularly during the 2 periods of school closures. And all the research is saying that there was an increased level in collaboration, collegiality, teamwork among people. There was an increase in professional learning and the use of digital technologies. A challenge for many teachers, however, was that they really felt they didn't have the skills. But that was good in itself too, because people began to recognize, I don't have the skills, so maybe I need to do something about it, okay? And let's be fair, okay, so stop beating ourselves up over it. Policy enactment takes a long time. And really, if you were to look at it, the last digital strategy was 2015 to 2020, but it was really only 3 years. And then it was interrupted by sort of COVID. So, you know, stand back and say, okay, we have done quite a lot. We have moved quite a bit. And digital education, we have to remember digital learning in schools, it's policy. We have to actually have the strategy, and then it has to be implemented, okay? So we have moved. Initially, when we did the 2013 census, most people, this is the UNESCO framework, I'm sure many of you have seen it, it's been changed from 2011, this is the most updated one. And again, you'll see the differences in language, all moving in the right direction. Around 2013, most of our sort of teachers and educators were actually here, the knowledge acquisition, and actually an awful lot of people were actually here, okay, at this stage. However, now, you know, over the last number of years, there are pockets, there is evidence to indicate that there are a lot of people moving towards the knowledge deepening, okay? So we are making progress. However, what we need to actually think about is 45% of the primary schools and 38% of post-primary, digital technologies were not a feature of teaching and learning according to the Department of Education Inspectorate report. However, remember, look at the year 2020. So the visits were done before that. I reckon if they went back in, they'd see an increase. So again, let's be positive about it. Many schools, however, when we did the consultation and we actually looked at what was going on, this is important. Many schools were and still are unaware of what dimension of the digital learning framework the school is focusing on. So I then asked the question, well, are they using the digital learning framework? Are they using school self-assessment? We are all supposed to use it, okay, the self-assessment. They were actually unaware of the supporting resources available on SchoolNet, WebWise, and the Digital Learning Planning website, which is an awful pity because they are such good resources. So how do we actually create this greater awareness? And they were unsure how to access external professional learning support. The PDST will attest to that. Schools didn't know that you can actually reach out. You can actually look for planning days. You can actually get the people in. However, the PDST staff can't multiply themselves by 100, but at least if they knew about it, maybe they could actually help out. And a lot of people didn't understand about procurement. These are the sticking points that we saw, and I won't go into them all because I'll come back to what we have to focus on. Leadership and management, focused professional learning for leaders, the challenges implementing the digital learning framework, time for staff, because where's the time to sort of talk and discuss, and then the fit between the digital learning framework and our assessment structures. Okay, they all need to be addressed. So they're emerging sticking points that we need to actually address. As well as that, like we need to really address what does effective practice look like in respect to digital learning? How do we develop the language around that we actually have the shared understandings? And then formal processes for reporting on the digital learning plans, okay? And then the whole thing of how do we build up that awareness of what's out there? A lot of the stuff, if people want to know more about it, it's all in the baseline report, if you want to look at it, because that actually influenced the digital strategy, and we really pushed. And thanks to all the consultation now, we have a new digital strategy. It was announced. I keep asking the questions. I'm making several phone calls about the implementation plan, but we also need everybody else making the phone calls about the implementation plan. However, that doesn't mean that we don't act, okay? We need to understand the direction the policy is to take, but we have it within our gift now to actually go with it. We know what the vision is, okay? So we can actually start to implement the vision and then start leveraging and actually looking for the help that we need, okay? So again, I'll remind people about the vision. How are we actually going to get that? There is always a big push about how do we get okay, we have the purpose now, we have the policy in place. However, we need to think of these things and then how do we actually implement it into practice? And I think we need to recognize that this is quite complex. There's the yin and the yang, there's the policy and the practice. So we have the policy, we now have to look at the practice. These, I think, are the big issues we need to sort out going forward if we really have to enact that policy. We have to tackle this, the challenge of system-wide alignment. We really have to look at leadership and professional learning, and we really have to recognize the key role of the agentic teacher. And I think those three things, and they're each big in themselves. Just for example, if you look at, this is the challenge of trying to align all the different levels in the system, okay? So we have just look at don't mind the words here for the moment. If you just look at this, the top order, we have this now on the way. We have the practice guidelines. But how do we actually now get it so that it's actually working in the school? How do we actually get the policy and the vision into the schools? And then, if it's in the schools and the conversations are happening and everything else, how do we ensure that it happens then at the actual classroom level? So most of you be used to the macro, the meso, and the micro. So how do we do that? How do we have everybody talking to one another? Because this is really what gets taken up. And how do we bridge that chasm? How do we ensure that all teachers at school level really understand the policy, really sort of can engage with it? And I think we have to do this. We really have to have a robust, contextually and culturally relevant model of professional learning. For school leaders as well as teachers. School leaders tend to be left out of the equation, but school leaders are the people who actually develop the culture, support people, enable people to do things, but it has to be well funded, it needs to be coherent and flexible. And the type of professional learning has to be student-centred, interdisciplinary, and it has to have meaningful connections to the technology. And then how do we actually develop this so that it's supported within a learning ecosystem? So I think these are the big things we need to actually now focus on. Not am I going to use Chromebooks or Surfaces or all those sort of things. We need to actually make sure that this is happening. How do we make sure that we have a professional learning culture that's actually going to be fit for purpose? And I think that's what we need to actually push for. And then the leadership. How do we enable and support effective school leadership to actually have people that they can identify the specific actions that are needed at their school level? How can we support people to do that? We need to actually have leadership to engage in developing the culture, and I think we need to have to spend a lot of time doing this. And they need to be able to be empowered to recognise when they need help and where to go for it. So I think there's a big body of work that has to be done there. And we have to really focus on the agentic teacher. How can we actually enable them to understand what being digital learning is and can be, why it's important, how learning experiences can be designed. We need to invest effort and resources, and we need thoughtful consideration of the professional learning opportunities that are developed. I don't believe in if I see it, I can be it. I believe in if I can experience it, I can imagine it. Because if I don't have experience, remember everybody is expected, particularly teachers, are expected to design very new learning experiences. But if I have not had experience of a very different way of learning, and if my values, beliefs, and assumptions have not been challenged, then I can't engage in doing new things. So I think we really have to focus on that and providing those learning experiences and knowing that it takes time, because it does require changing beliefs, and changing beliefs take time because we're all wedded to our beliefs. So just so you understand how difficult it is, this was actually launched yesterday. Okay? The framework, just at primary level. Okay? That's what a teacher is expected to do now at primary level. Okay? So I'm asking you, we need to stand up and shout and say, if you want this, this is a lovely, beautiful curriculum. I've been begging for it for decades, okay? But we need to support people now to do it. So if you look at it, these are the key competencies, and they actually have to be completely embedded within these. And there's war going on because there's lots of subject areas being merged and all sorts of things. So there's turf wars going on there. And I keep saying, hang on a minute, how are we going to do this? How are we going to actually make sure that teachers are enabled to actually create learning environments that ensure our learners are well, that they are competent digital learners, that they are effective communicators, that they are creative, active citizens, and that they can actually take an active part in the world. So that's what I think is really important. So now that brings you back to, we need to ask the right questions. We need to ask, why are we doing things? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Because this is a very, very complex world. They're the people that we need to develop. They're the questions we need to ask. And I'm saying we need now to start joining the dots for ourselves. The policy people, because they've been pushed and we keep arguing, they are joining the dots. We now have, the primary curriculum framework is to die for. I have said, this is great. This is what we've been looking for. But now how do we support people that they can start to join the dots together and that we understand what we need to do? So I think this is our responsibility. And I think we need to remember that what is core is that we need to enable people to understand and have an impact in the world. That learning flourishes in a complex world, and that's our responsibility as educators, but we need the time, and we also need experiences of very different types, because if we can't do it, then we can't ensure that our students can do this. However, we can't sit back. I always use the sporting analogy. We can't stand and wait for the ball to come to us. We have to run to where we think the ball is going to be. And another one of my people I admire, Mahatma Gandhi, You must be the change you want to see in the world. You must be, all of you, okay? You need to get up and fight and make sure that you see the change you want to see in the world. And you can be scared, you feel the fear and do it anyway, okay? Because in order to make change, you have to take a chance. And we have a moral imperative. And that's where we're in a very different position. Other people have to catch up and they have to use the technology. We actually have to use the technology, understand it, and then design learning for others that they can actually use the technology in intelligent ways. So I say to everybody, look, let's all hold hands, do it together, we'll do the jump, we'll take the chance, and then we'll actually see the change we want to see in the world. So thanks for being such an attentive audience.
Time. However, I would just ask your forbearance for just 1 minute because I feel it's very, very important. It's already been alluded to earlier. We would like in CESI to mark our appreciation of the work done by a person who has been insightful, inspiring, a leader, and who has done the amazing work for so many years as our chair. Now, there's been lots and lots of connections taking place today, but I think